When you're trying to smooth over a questionable legacy, and your name is Bob Iger, and your heir apparent Dana Walden seems to be due for her coronation almost any time now by the Disney puppet board, then you have to make sure that one thing still sticks out in the media like a sore thumb, and that is the blame game. Because don't you know, everything wrong at Disney is thanks to the 10 months and 2 weeks that Bob Chapek was in control. Renegade Online. Chapek came in, he had his own designs, and Iger really thought that Chapek was going to be his acolyte, right? Chapek was supposed to he was going to come in, and Bob Iger was going to train him to do everything the Bob Iger way, because that's what the Bob Iger company does. It's not the Disney company anymore. It hadn't been a while. It's the Bob Iger company. And then when Chapek started doing things his own way and upsetting the apple cart, especially with Bob Iger's precious Hollywood friends, the people that mean more to him than life itself, and all the studio heads, because Chapek said, you know what, we're going to change the way the money flows through here. Because, some of these budgets and some of the things that we're spending on these projects is getting a little crazy. That really pissed off some people. And remember, Bob...
Well, the other thing, Valiant, was when Chapek created that battery system for filtering out divisive content.
Yeah. That's what I was saying, is that whole issue with, the same reason it was Chapek's people that stopped Pixar originally from adding in the lesbian kissing scene full on into the
Kareem
movie.
Daniel was the most powerful black male in Hollywood, flat out. You don't hear anything about him.
No,
he was hated for that.
The Bob Iger people fired him too. What they're trying to say here is that Dana Walden could maybe wind up being the same kind of era, but I agree with you, Pro. I don't think it's gonna be the same thing at all. I think Dana Walden is much of the same Hollywood animal, the Brentwood, Los Angeles neighborhood, Hollywood party animal, just like, and I don't mean go out and get drunk party animal, but just she loves the social scene, just like Bob Iger does.
Even worse, Valiant, she's the San Fran variety. Look out.
Yeah, she's the San Francisco lib for sure. But the thing is that Bob Chapek didn't give a flying flip about any of that. He came from the parks side. He didn't come from the television and film side. He ran the parks. He ran merchandise for years. He was more of the Josh D'Amaro type. Bob Chapek wasn't out at San Francisco and Los Angeles parties with the Hollywood elites every weekend. He was the guy who was on a fishing boat in the middle of a lake on a weekend. He was a very different type than Iger was. They talk about some of that here, which I kind of had to laugh at when they're trying to make this comparison, which I think, again, is silly. They talk about how Chapek, quote, failed spectacularly, which, again, I completely disagree with. He wasn't perfect, but again, we've chronicled this I don't know how many times. All of these failures that we've had at Disney the last couple of years were all entirely set up by Bob Iger. And in fact, the one big success, if you want to think about this from the creative side that they've now had officially, is Deadpool and Wolverine. Guess who we have to thank for getting Hugh Jackman back for that movie? That was Bob Chapek. We all know that. That movie.
I want to fail so badly the stock was double what it is currently. I want to fail that bad too. Please let me fail that bad.
It's like, yeah, right. So the failure on the part is because all the Hollywood people that were that side of Disney did not like Chapek because he wasn't one of them. He wasn't part of the cult.
Right. He wanted to talk about, I remember this, actually, some actors being frustrated and some execs being frustrated because they would say that Bob Iger was the sort of fellow who would talk about the latest wines that were being sampled at Martha's Vineyard. Meanwhile, Chapek was the sort of guy who would talk to you about treasury bonds and real estate purchases. So that's the difference. That's the persona. Yeah.
and
beer versus Martha's Vineyard wines. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That was, and fishing poles. He was that kind of, he was that kind of guy. He was much more of that kind of normal dude. But they say here, many of Dana Walden's defenders see some sexism at play here and like to point out that Iger himself, here we go again, you don't like the acolyte because you're racist and sexist. You don't like Dana Walden because you're sexist. It's the same idiot, stupid mentality. We're going to get it.
Shooting,
Look, let me tell you what.
shooting fish in a barrel, man. I'm telling you, they have
I-
one card to play. They have one card.
That's it. And Grizz, you watch this. You're going to see a lot of the very same people on Twitter that we're all laughing at now with the Acolyte. They are going to be sent out the minute Dana Walden gets named as CEO. They're going to get sent out, and they're going to come after the same people, us, again, when we start laughing and telling everybody how bad Dana's going to be and show the receipts. You watch, you're going to see the same crazies out there. I don't understand why they just hate women so much. It's the same Star Wars fans now going after Dana Walden. We're gonna get it all over again. You watch.
The memes of her and Kamala, yeah,
big time. But they see sexism at play here. Dylan Beyer says about some of the people that, looking at folks like us who critique Dana Walden, like to point out that Iger himself was seen as an empty suit before his own ascension, a handsome but boring guy without Michael Eisner's vision and dynamism. He went on to become one of the most revered and well-regarded CEOs in Hollywood's history. The Iger
Before he destroyed it all.
Yeah, before he spent over $100 billion buying stuff that still hasn't.
How much he must regret coming back, Valiant. How much must he regret coming back? Because that statement is 99% universally true amongst everybody who paid attention until he returned. And when he returned, he proved to the world that he could not redeem the company. And my, oh my, what a horrible decision to come back. What a terrible decision. Worse than MJ on the Wizards, I say.
Yeah, he could have stayed out and just let Bob Chapek keep taking the blame for everything that he did. But Bob Iger being back, now he's basically shown that, no, this was, I made all this mess before I left.
What's worse, he thought Chapek was going to actually excel, right? They were going to get rid of the political stuff and the company might excel. And so that was not okay, because that, in Iger's mind, that was going to take away from him, as opposed to what Iger could have said, which is, well, I set this up for success. I'm so proud of my successor. But no, that couldn't be had, because they were going to moderate the company. And that's a no-no with Iger and his lefty elites.
Listen to this section here, because this is what I find interesting. The Iger precedent is a little bit more nuanced, of course. Iger spent 5 years as chief operating officer before he became CEO. Now, of course, that was, again, you had a board and the Disney family running Michael Eisner out with 42% of the vote. Nelson Peltz picked up 33% this last February. Y'all think he didn't get that much, but it only took 42 to 45% to get rid of Michael Eisner. It wasn't that far off. So his range of experience, talking about Iger here, was never in question. Then again, that might hint at the true source of anxiety among the Dana Walden skeptics. Not that they think that Dana Walden isn't ultimately capable of the top job, but that the succession process itself might rush her into a position before she has had similar experience across the company, which is true, because Chapek was merchandise, he was parks, and especially parks, because again, remember, Disney's a theme park company. That's where the lion's share, overwhelmingly, of all their money is made. It's theme parks still. We've talked about it before, Grizzly. I don't know if you ever heard me mention the statistics, but even in 2019, when Disney had 5 movies that did over $1 billion. They had Avengers Endgame. They had all kind of. I mean, they had every. What is that? They how many movies? They had that one. They had even if you threw in Infinity War the year before, I think they were responsible for like $6 billion of the box office that year. Like half the box office was Disney. If you took all the profits from that, it still didn't even amount to like a month's worth of what ESPN does.
Wow.
So it's like, when you look at the actual financial statements, of course, it's big, like Avengers Endgame, biggest movie of all time. But when you start adding all that up and you look at the billions of dollars of revenue from the parks and from ESPN and live sports, especially when you kick off NFL season or something like that, it's a drop in the bucket. And that was the best year they ever had in the theaters. Again, it feeds into the parks and it feeds into merchandise and other things, but this is why Disney is still a parks company first. So, but if you look at here, that's kind of what they're saying. Like Dana Walden, she's worked in television, but she's never worked on the park side. She has no idea how those really work. Josh D'Amaro does, and it's still a parks company. But I like this quote here. Many see Bob Iger falling for Dana Walden the same way he fell for Bob Chapek, seeing what he wants to see not tolerating dissent or criticism, and not actively looking for feedback. That right there is exactly the Bob Iger that we've come to know. It's all about what he wants, and this is why he and Bob Chapek, after he put Chapek in the position, didn't get along. And here's the key. Almost nobody that comes in to replace Iger, ultimately, even Dana Walden, is going to be able to do the job like they might want to do it, because even at the end of 2026, when Bob Iger is no longer CEO, short of him being renewed again, he still has a 5-year advisory contract with the Walt Disney Company as a consultant, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, 2031. Bob Iger right now is not going to be detached from the Walt Disney Company until January of 2032.
And he's not leaving his office either.
No, he didn't leave his office when Chapek took over. He had retired,
Right.
and he still kept the CEO suite. And Chapek was like, whatever. If it makes you happy, I don't care. So even if they brought somebody from outside, Iger's still going to be snooping around, still going to be causing trouble behind the scenes. And the minute that even if Dana Walden does something that Bob Iger himself wouldn't do, just like Chapek, Iger is going to start making problems behind the scenes.
In any normal company, the question right now would be, who can improve our profits? Who can increase our margins? Who can create the biggest return on investment for our shareholders, stockholders, investors, everybody who wants to be a part of this? The Disney company is not a normal company.
No.
Nowhere in this article is Dana Walden cited as a financial guru or genius. This is all political.
Yeah.
The Disney company is essentially entirely a political system. There is nothing about this company that is driven by finances that I can see, and that is why if you had invested in the S&P 500 and you had invested in Disney at the same time 3 years ago, Disney would have cost you half of your investment, and the S&P 500 would be up dramatically. That's the difference here. The delta is amazing.
85% or so. I mean, it's night and day. Yeah, oh yeah, it's one of the worst performing.
I don't know why there's not a revolt.
Dow.
The only thing I can figure out, maybe you can help me, Valiant. Maybe the institutions have become so political at this point, so partisan that they don't care, so they're willing to take the loss. Maybe BlackRock, Vanguard, and the rest, they're subsidizing Disney as part of their DEI initiative, and they're saying, well, we'll find wins in the rest of our portfolio. But Disney is clearly not being run in the way that a normal company would be. What do you think is going on with the Morgan Stanley situation on validating essentially the pick? Why do you think Morgan Stanley was brought in?
I think out of everybody, and I think I talked about this Wednesday, out of everybody that they could have picked on that board to head it, probably Gorman is the most appropriate, because at Morgan Stanley, they, as an institutional investor, go through this process quite frequently with the companies that they buy in their funds that they manage. They're as an originator of a lot of bonds, as an originator of a lot of IPOs. Morgan Stanley is kind of used to this. I think an investment firm like them, actually, it's probably about the best pick that Disney could have made. But my issue is that with Gorman, it's whether it was Gorman or anybody else, Morgan Stanley or anybody else, I don't think it matters. I think the position on Disney's board is largely ceremonial, because it's still going to be the Bob Iger show. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.